punks who are into these practices kind of few and far between, I think. And
I didn't even know you were a yogi. Now I'm completely intrigued. You could be like, oh my God, I just murdered somebody and now I want to reform myself. And yoga's there for you. It really is. Like, I just find it's so broad and so inclusive. It's just one of the most wonderful things about.
what's the practice going to be? And he told us to meet him outside. There's this giant pot of water. It was like a salt water. And the practice was you just start filling your glass, slamming this water as hard as you can, because then you're going to throw up and clean your intestines. Everybody was freaking out about it because I was like the token punk guy. Everyone's kind of like, Miguel will go first. He's fine with this.
You asked your wife to marry you inside a yoga studio?
Mm-hmm.
You're a real yogi, dude.
Get this though, we're also real punks because
what a dumb world we live in, where everybody thinks they're smart. We're all too stubborn to admit that we really don't know shit. It's so dumb.
Welcome to the Collaborative Resource Hub by Wellness Provisions. We're bridging the gap between mental health, wellness, and rock and roll. I'm Amy McBride, owner of Wellness Provisions, the most badass wellness business. Hey, are you feeling a little stuck in life? I offer wellness coaching sessions. Book a session with me if you're seeking to get healthy and ahead. Sessions are available worldwide. And check this out. Wellness Provisions supplies rock and rollers with high-quality supplements. We've simplified your shopping experience and given you a trustworthy place to go where you can essentially shop blindfolded. And did you know all our Collaborative Resource Hub interviews air on YouTube as well as all major podcast platforms? Subscribe to stay in the loop. Go immerse yourself in the full Collaborative Resource Hub experience over on our website. You'll have access to helpful resources that will inspire and educate you. So let's inspire each other. If that guy did it, so can you. Last but not least, my legal disclaimer. Nothing in this interview or the Collaborative Resource Hub substitutes medical advice. Please connect with your GP if you need medical guidance. Guys, thank you, Porcell and Miguel, for being here for the final season of season 3 of the Collaborative Resource Hub podcast. Are we excited?
Really excited. Sad to see you go, but happy to be a part of this.
Can I start it out with a question?
Absolutely.
Miguel, have we ever met before?
I don't think that we have. No, probably not.
I was trying to think, like, maybe we played a festival show together somewhere down the line,
but maybe it seems like maybe Europe would be a place we would run into each other, but I'm not sure. I don't think so, actually.
We should have met a long time ago. What's going on? It's no idea to bring us together.
Yeah, it is cool to be here together.
Yeah, I'm psyched.
Yeah, it's like you guys are meant to. It is weird that you don't, you haven't personally like known each other or whatever, like fucking done yoga together.
Super weird. It's like punks who are into these practices kind of few and far between, I think. And
I didn't even know you were a yogi. Now I'm completely intrigued.
How about this then? Each of you give like a quick little bio or synopsis of yourself.
Yeah, you want to start, Porcell?
Sure. My name is Porcell. I've played in Youth of Today, Judge, Shelter. I played in Gorilla Biscuits for a hot minute. I played in Bold for a hot minute. And now I'm in a new band called Values Here. A record just came out. I'm pretty excited about it. So I keep busy. I'm also a yoga teacher. That's like my day gig, I guess. And yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. My name is Miguel. I've been in Teenage Bottlerocket forever. Played in a couple other bands, nothing too notable, but father of 3. Currently living in Montreal with my wife and 3 kids. We're both yoga instructors. We own a yoga studio in Wyoming called Blossom Yoga, and a studio here in Montreal called Yoga et Massage pour vous. I think that's it. I'm growing a beard because winter's coming.
That's smart. Insulate your face.
Yeah.
Cool.
Really cool. You actually own a couple of yoga studios. That's amazing.
Yeah, man. We really love it. And there was a period sort of pre-pandemic where, you know, we had 2 studios in Wyoming. We were opening another one in Texas, running this online program, Yoga for Punks, that also does like live events, and that I still do a little bit, but the yoga business part kind of expands and contracts. And so right now we're humbly just running these 2 studios.
How do you do the yoga studio in Wyoming if you're all the way in Canada?
Yeah, we've got a business partner at that one studio, and so we when we had 2, we were running one of them like day to day, and our partner was running the other one, and we'd go over a couple times a week. But when we left Wyoming, we kind of tried to work with another partner. It didn't really work out, so we got rid of the one studio, left the other one with a partner, and now we just kind of poke our heads in once in a while. My wife flies down there once a month for a yoga teacher training program we run, and I show up very rarely, but I think people are happy when I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to own my own studio too.
Oh, you did?
Huh?
I had a studio called Govinda Yoga in Chatham, and I did it for 6 years. It was probably some of the best years of my life running that yoga studio. And then I moved to California and I sold it to Ray Capo, who's a singer for Shelter and Youth Today. And he ran it successfully for a really long time. It's sort of like reinvigorated yoga in upstate New York. And then the pandemic hit and he just couldn't keep it going.
Yeah, man.
I think he lost like a lot of money, trying to like weather the storm of the pandemic, but eventually it closed.
Yeah. Tough times, like for yoga businesses for sure, and also for musicians. And yeah, just we were talking about that during the pandemic, because like I do 3 things, right? Like yoga, punk rock, and write books. And I was like, I picked like the 3 shittiest industries to be involved in the event of a world pandemic, as far as job security or whatever. Like just all of it. Like, so.
Well, at least you probably had plenty of time to write books.
Yeah, but nobody wanted to release books during the pandemic or whatever. Like all the publishers kind of clammed up, and they're like, are you on TV? And I was like, no. And they're like, yeah.
I didn't even know that you wrote books. Now I'm fascinated. Tell me about your books.
Yeah, man. I have a couple books out with Wisdom Publications out of Somerville, Massachusetts. So they do a lot of like Dalai Lama stuff and a lot of like Buddhist, like, holy men and wise teachers and stuff, Pema Chodron. And I kind of got my foot in the door there because there happened to be an editor whose husband was like a big Teenage Bottlerocket fan, and saw some like articles I've been doing for like Lions Roar magazine and things like that. And roundabout they offered me a book deal. We did 2 books together, and now I haven't written a book in 4 or 5 years.
What are the books about?
First one's called I Want to Be Well, How a Punk Found Peace and You Can Too, which is sort of like a meditation, a little bit of yoga book. Pretty punk, colorful language you can imagine. And the second one was called The Death of You, a book for anyone who might not live forever, which was same kind of punk rock meditation book, but really focused on death and dying.
It's really good. I read that one.
Great. I'm writing a book right now. I'm trying to write a book about Krishna core, but it's not like a a real comprehensive thing and the whole phenomenon of Krishna core that happened in the 90s. It's just basically like how the whole thing happened from my perspective, like me getting into Krishna and getting into bhakti and yoga and stuff like that, and what happened around shelter. But I tell you, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, writing a book.
The best advice I ever got on writing a book was I had this editor, Josh, who was just like, just write a shitty book. Just get it on paper. And if it's garbage, like, we'll fix it,
But like a draft one.
That's advice. I'm really hustling to try to at least get, I don't know, I'm only about maybe 20% through the book, and I've been working on it for a couple of years. It's kind of embarrassing. But when I was the last time I was in India, which was 2 years ago, we went to see a mystic yogi. In India, you can still find mystic yogis, like people that are just like, they can just read you, like they just have mystic abilities. And so I was with a group, a small group, and we went to go see this mystic yogi. And the first thing he said was, there was like a girl there, and he looked at her and he just told her these things that were so personal, and things like you just wouldn't tell anybody else. And he just like rattles off these things about her life, and she was just like, oh my God, like, how can you know that? And she was almost in like tears. And so I was like, oh my God, this guy is the real deal. So I had moved back from California, and I wasn't teaching yoga at the time. And so so we were all kind of like getting our readings when he got to me, and it was so embarrassing because he's doing them in front of everybody else. And if you have anything embarrassing in your past, he's bringing it up. So he looked at me and he goes, why aren't you teaching yoga? Why? I don't know. This guy, how does this Indian man even know that I'm a yoga teacher?
Yeah.
Why are you teaching yoga? It's your calling. You should be doing it. You have to get back into it. It's your service. It's your contribution. And then he also said, why haven't you written your book yet? And this idea of writing a book had been like rattling around in my skull for like years. He goes, why haven't you written your book yet? Why? You have to write your book. And he gave me some really good advice, because I actually tried to write like a memoir. And I was just like, I just got through and I was like, my life isn't like Harley Flanagan from the Cro-Mags life. Like, I didn't grow up in squats, and I wasn't fighting the police when I was like 12 years old. It was like, I was just like a nice straight-edge kid from Westchester. Who the hell is going to read my boring book? So I kind of put it down, and I got a little discouraged. And he said, I know you're discouraged writing your book. You have to make your book bigger than just your story. You have to figure out something that you're a part of that's bigger than just your own little story, and then you'll find inspiration to write your book. And when he said that, it was like, wow, I had this like big epiphany that I'm going to write about Krishna and hardcore and how this whole phenomenon thing happened. And just that little thing that he told me clicked, and I started working on it. I think it's coming out really good. But I'm going back to India in January and February, and I probably will see him. And if I'm not at least halfway finished with that book, he's going to mystically burn a hole like through my third eye or something. So I've been working on it, but it's hard. It's hard. So congratulations to you on finishing 2 books. If nobody's tried to write a book, they have no idea what that takes to write 2 books.
Yeah. It's a lucky, one lucky thing I think was like I had contracts in place and like a team that was kind of just like, yeah, no slacking. Like, you owe us this book. Like, so.
Did they pay you a bunch of money up front? And you're like, oh crap, I have to do this.
Yeah, I was like, there's a book advance that is gone. We got to do that.
Oh yeah, that's cool. So, sorry to hijack the interview.
No,
Please proceed.
It's good. You got awesome stuff, out on the table already. Okay. So I have questions for you guys. Some are silly, some are more, serious or, inspirational or whatever. So it's a good mix. And I'll start with the first one. What does yoga mean to you?
Boy, oh boy, that's a big one. Why don't you go first on this one, brother?
Yeah, of course. I think I had a wrong idea about what it was for a long time, which kind of kept me away from ever investigating yoga. I thought it was exercise and bendiness and stretch pants and saying flowery shit and that kind of stuff. And I think now, having lived in this world for quite some time, I realize it's more, it's less surfacey than that, right? It's more this truth that's it's around us, and it's not necessarily easy to define, but kind of this truth that we're greater than we think we are, and we're more connected than we think we are. And so the practice of yoga is really a series of exercises, like breathing exercises and physical exercises and meditation practices and things that we consciously try to bring into our life so that we can connect to whatever this truth might be, and so that we can connect to ourselves and we can connect with each other in a way that that expands us, right, rather than constricts us and lets us sort of quietly live a life that's bigger than we might have previously imagined. How's that?
Great.
Solid.
I would say what yoga means to me. I came to asana in a really weird way. Like, usually people get into asana first, and then they get curious about, oh, what is Om? What is all this spiritual stuff? What is the chanting all about? I came into it backwards, because I was already a Krishna devotee long before I did asana. And I had been to, I go to India every year, check into an ashram for 3 or 4 months, study the Bhagavad Gita, study all these, different kinds of like yoga literature. And I had really never done an up dog or a down dog. I think I might have told the story. Did I tell the story about how I was turned off to yoga in the last podcast?
Possibly.
Well, when we were first starting Youth Today, me and Ray were roommates, and we had this really crappy apartment on the west side, on 15th Street. And on 14th Street, there was a yoga studio called Integral Yoga. And so we were getting into vegetarianism and stuff like that. And I just moved to the city. And, when you move to the city from the suburbs, it just opened up to so much more stuff, like just even living with, I only had white kids in my school, and now I'm living in New York City with, all these other, different kinds of people. And it really just, expands you. And so there was a yoga studio that was around the corner, and it was connected to a health food store that we would shop at because we were getting into vegetarianism. So I decided I'm going to take a yoga class. Like, what's this yoga stuff all about? And when I got there, it was one of those like super easy yoga studios. Like, there's yoga for everybody, and there's yoga for old ladies. It was kind of like that. It was like you'd sit Indian style and be like, and then breathe in, raise your hands up over your head. That's it. Beautiful. Namaste. Keep your hands over your head for 5 breaths. Now bring your hands down to your heart center. Om. And you just do that for like 45 minutes. And I'm pretty high paced now, but you can imagine how high paced I was when I was like 18, 19 years old. It's like I was so hyper hardcore kid. All I wanted to do was stage dive. I couldn't do this. And I was just thinking, like, yoga is just not for me. And so even when I was going to India and I was studying all this stuff, I wasn't into asana because I had this mistaken idea of what it was all about. And it was only till I took my first vinyasa class in India, which was 3 hours long, and it was the hardest class. It was like, you think CrossFit is hard? Like
I remember you sharing this, yeah.
And then it turned me on to this whole world of yoga. So I kind of got into it backwards. So by the time I even did my first down dog, I had a very clear idea what yoga was all about, because the yoga literature very clearly explains it. And really, if you look at any of the yoga literature, Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Sutras, Srimad Bhagavatam, any of these like books that like are classic texts on yoga, they all say the same thing. The goal of yoga is to really is to realize God, and to realize your relationship with God, and to realize, the Bhagavad Gita says that to know yoga is to know three things. It's to know yourself, it's to know the material world, and it's to know the source of both, which is God or Krishna or, the universe, whatever you want to kind of put on that. And the more I studied yoga with that in mind, the more everything sort of started to click into place. Like, why do we chant? Like, what are these chants? It all goes back to that original thing that yoga is meant, the word yoga means to reconnect. What are we trying to reconnect with? We're trying to reconnect with God. Really, in essence, that's what we're trying to do. The beauty of yoga really is that even though it's a spiritual path, it's so welcoming and it's so all encompassing. And it's not, I had this idea of spirituality when I was growing up, like just growing up like a Catholic kid and going to like CCD and like having a mean old priest yell at me for like an hour about what it says in the Bible. It was like, I just had this idea that like religion was something that was very dogmatic, and the dead Kennedys didn't like it, and therefore I didn't like it. And I really wasn't into religion at all. I was just like a little, rebellious punk rocker. But the more that I got into yoga, I understood like the real essence of religion. The word religion means the exact same thing as yoga. It means to reconnect, just like a ligament, connects muscle to bone or bone to bone or one of those things. So when I started getting into physical yoga, I really understood that. But it's really cool. The more that you study this, it's like yoga says, no matter where you are, we got something for you that's going to lift you up like this much. So you could be the most hardened, materialistic, self-absorbed, selfish person in the whole entire world. And, any other like spiritual practice would be like, you're condemned to hell for all eternity. We don't even want to see your face, But yoga is a spiritual practice where it's like, oh, that's how you are. We got a practice for you. And we got something for you that's going to lift you up like just this much. And then once you get lifted up just that first rung of the ladder, then we got something else for you, and you can kind of crawl yourself out of like your narcissistic, self-absorbed ways. And just like little by little by little by little, you kind of get purified to a place where you can open yourself up to, there's a bigger picture than just me. I've been living this kind of very self-absorbed lifestyle, but there's a bigger picture. And how can I connect to that bigger picture? And I always found it just so beautiful about yoga. It's just like, it's not judgmental at all. It's actually like it's almost like the worse you are, the more that you need yoga, and they got something for you. So
what you're saying now is it's a good segue, because the next question that I had was, what's one thing you wish more people knew about yoga? So like kind of like what you're talking about now is like that.
Yeah, that would be my answer to that question too, is that some people think, wow, I have tight hamstrings, I'm disqualified from yoga. But you could be like, oh my God, I just murdered somebody and now I want to reform myself. And yoga's there for you. You know, it really is. Like there's nothing that you can't do that yoga doesn't say. You can just dust yourself off, pick yourself up. We have some, you know, principles that you can follow. If this is too much, follow these principles. If that's too much, follow these principles. And I just find it's so broad and so inclusive. It's just one of the most wonderful things about yoga. And it's just so refreshing to find something that's spiritual, that's not, you know, very rigid and judgmental. And so I really love that about yoga. And I think if you do follow it to the end, it gets you to that place where other like traditional religions will get you. It'll get you to that place where you can find God, you can find your source, and you can start to develop your good qualities, which it's why we're here. You know, we're not here to make a bunch of money. We're not here to like, you know, collect a bunch of toys before we die. We're here to just, you know, kind of grow in consciousness. And it's a great gift, you know, of yoga. It's actually a very, very serious spiritual path if that's your inclination.
Miguel, what do you got for one thing you wish more people knew about yoga?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much about what you're saying, and I believe it too, and it's this like expansion and sort of this like removal of like illusions, right? So we can sort of see more clearly and you know, see that we are spiritual beings, and see that, again, like you said, these material things don't quite matter so much. And I Yoga Sutras, right? Yoga Chitta's Vritti Nirodha, right? And so it's this, yoga stops the fluctuations of the mind, right? And I think that there's sort of this truth about like, in a way, a lot of these things that we're doing are just sort of to stop this like false voice that we've identified with, or at least the identification with like all these incessant thoughts. Because when we are able to kind of have a clear mind, if even for just like a second or two, we sort of automatically connect to something greater, right? And so, you know, you were saying people find all sorts of excuses not to practice yoga, like I'm not fit enough, or my mind won't shut up, or whatever it might be. And I think that, yes, it can be super complex, and it is, there's many layers, and it's a very vibrant thing, but also on some level it's also a very simple, straightforward thing. And like you were talking about, there's something for you no matter where you are in this, right? And so I wish there's a way to convey that without the really stereotypical like yoga for everybody, like flowery shit that we hear all the time, that like, you know, someone like you or me hears that and we're like, ugh, like, you know, like it's so surfacey and fake, but like, but there really is something for all of us. Just how do you fucking say that in a way that really communicates it?
Yeah, there's got to be some depth to it. You know what I mean? If it's all just words and
Absolutely.
But also it's up to the person too. Like, you know, some people, depending wherever they are on their journey, they connect with the surface crap, and that's great for them and they're getting something out of it. And then there's the people who are like, no, there's got to be more, and they dig deeper, right?
Sure.
that is true. I've met people, you know, I've been teaching yoga for, you know, decades. I've met people that were just like, that are serious spiritual practitioners of yoga. And they got into yoga just because they wanted to exercise a little bit. They had no inclination that this was going to bring them anywhere, but they just wanted to, you know, get some toned abs or whatever. But, you know, yoga is like a river. It's like once you step into that river, you're going to be taken downstream. So I'm not even against people that come to yoga because they want to be healthy. Yoga is going to make you super healthy. And I think the great thing about it is that once you just get into the association of other people that are into yoga and they're into, maybe chanting or they're into other things. It just sort of carries you to a different place, whether that was your original intent or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. Here's an advert in less than 50 seconds. Are you sick and tired of feeling sick and tired? Do you want to feel better in your mind and body? Then check out the wellness coaching that I offer. It's kind of like therapy. You can share what's on your mind, and then it's all about taking action. You'll learn new tools to help you heal and grow through what's tripping you up. We can focus on anything from physical health to mental health. Schedule a free 15-minute consult over on the website to learn more. And check out our Healthy Touring course. This self-guided online video course is for any level of musician. Whether you tour all the time or only sometimes, you'll learn a ton if your goal is to play better, feel better, and be better. With special appearances by members of Descendants, Teenage Bottlerocket, The Last Gang, Lawrence Arms, and more. Head over to the website for all the details. Now, back to the interview. All right, here's a fun one. What's the hardest yoga pose that you've had to learn? The most challenging?
I guess there's kind of two aspects to it, right? There are things that are like really incredibly physically challenging, and then there's things that, for example, I've had a lot of students over the year that like Shavasana comes, which is like our resting time, and they can't do it. They roll up their mat and like bail and like, oh, I gotta run back to work or whatever, because somehow, they sort of justify it with like, well, I did like the physically hard part. I don't need to like lay down. But really, for a lot of people, I think that sitting in stillness is quite difficult. And Amy, you'll be aware that Porcell, like I came to this through a background of Buddhism. Like I was very into Zen Buddhism for many, many years before I ever stepped into a yoga studio or opened a yoga book, or and for me it was kind of this complementary thing where I was like, sitting still is very, very difficult, but there's something about asana practice that makes it easier. And as I've gone deeper and I've learned more, we teach and practice traditional hatha yoga, and so we have a lot of understanding of like, you need to move your spine all 7 directions, you need to do all types, standing postures, seated postures, forward folds, back bends, twists, and all of this, not just because it makes it physically more comfortable to sit, but because there's this internal purification of nadis, which is going to help you be still, and it's going to help you go a little deeper in your meditation. So I think on the one hand, I would say that sitting still is probably still the most difficult thing.
Wow. For me, it's back bends.
Me too. I mean, yeah, the back bends are hard.
Yeah, I can do all these crazy arm balances and it just comes so easy to me. I was always like an athletic kid. I was a punk rocker, but I played football in high school. People used to make fun of youth today, used to call us like the jocks of the punk scene, because we kind of were. We were into like being physically fit and stuff. And so, to do the crow, to Kodnyasana 2, and, crow on fingertips and handstands and all that stuff just like, it just comes naturally to me almost. But back bends, oh my God, forget it. It's like, I'm still not good at back bends. I've been doing yoga for years and years and years. It's funny because I know like I need to do this. Like what's great about yoga is that it exposes your weaknesses because it deals with the whole entire body. It's not like when you go to the gym and you just get big biceps and a big pecs and like big thighs, it's like every single little muscle group is being, strengthened. And if there's any kind of like loose link in the chain, you'll understand it. So yeah, I have to work on my back bends for sure. I have to do way more back bends because those are the things that are hard for me. And you gotta really seal up your weaknesses, I think. But yeah, for me, damn it. I see these girls just get in there, they're just like super open backs and everything. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous.
But that's also that's kind of one of the things too, right? Like it brings this awareness of different body types and different strengths and weaknesses. And so, like in the same class, like I could hold a headstand for a year, or obviously not a year, but for a long fucking time, almost effortlessly, like eyes closed, legs in Padmasana, just standing on my head, right? But then we'll go into like you said, a back bend or a certain twist, and you'll see someone in class who like so effortlessly like clasps their hands and binds themselves into some posture, and I'm like, well, that's part of the trade-off, right? Like super strong shoulders, upper body can stand like this forever, comes with closed, tight shoulders.
I tell you, that was one of the biggest reliefs for me because early in my career, I when I was doing yoga full time, I was like, I'm really going to make a go of this. And when I was in down dog, I couldn't get my heels to the floor. And I'd been doing yoga for like 8 years, 9 years. And I'm like, and I was really working on it. I was working on like, my calf flexibility and, doing all kinds of things. And I could not get my heels to the floor. And so there was a famous yoga teacher in New York City. She was like a yoga therapist. And Raghunath said, you should go to her. Like, she'll fix you up. She's really intuitive about the body. And she looks at your practice and she, fixes you basically. So I went to her and I was like, I cannot get my heels to the floor in down dog. And she took my foot. She goes, let me see. She took my foot and she like stuffed her thumb like way hard my foot, then like pulled it back. And she goes, oh yeah, of course you can't get your heels to the floor because your bone is hitting bone. And that's just the way that your foot is shaped. Like, you're never going to get your heels to the floor. And you know what? It's okay. She's just like, we have this idea of what perfection in yoga is. And we don't realize that we're all just, we're all so unique. We have unique bodies. Some people have ligaments that are really long. And then, stretchy stuff is super easy. Some people have shorter ligaments. She said, you just got to embrace and kind of celebrate the individuality of your body. And it was such a relief. It was like, oh my God, like, thank God I came to you because I've been trying to get those heels to the ground and it's just like, it wasn't happening. And now I understand that it's just not going to happen. Like, the way that my foot is shaped, bone goes to bone, and I just can't get them that extra half an inch or whatever. And, I had a similar experience when I was first doing yoga in India, and I was taking those super hard 3-hour vinyasa classes. Since I was not, and I was practically one of the only white people in the class, like it was mostly Indians. And if you've ever been to India, they don't sit in chairs. Like from the time they're kids, they're doing like, malasana, they're squatting, like, they squat all the time. And, so I come in, I have like super tight hips, I'm like an American kid, and so all the other Indian people, they would make fun of me because like I would sit in malasana and I would just be like 10 seconds. I would just be like, you could see the pain on my face, just trying to like sit in malasana, and they could sit for hours, so they're all laughing at me. And one time the teacher came over, I think we were doing pigeon pose or something, and they're all laughing at me because my hips are so tight. And he came over and he slapped me on the back and he said, Paramananda, he called me by my Christian name. He goes, Paramananda, you are a piece of wood. And then the whole class, all the Indian, they're all laughing at me. Oh, he's a piece of wood. Look at him. It's a piece of wood. And then later on in the class, we started getting into like Kodanyasana 2 and Kodanyasana 1. And even though I wasn't very good at yoga, bam, Kodanyasana 2, like no problem. Crow pose, bam, crow pose, no problem. And he did it kind of as a lesson to all the kids all the people that were laughing at me. And then he came over to me after the class. He called me over and he said, I wasn't making fun of you when I said you were a piece of wood. He said, actually, you are a piece of wood. You're super strong. Because all these other guys that are making fun of you, you have like 10 times the strength of all these other guys that are laughing at you. And he said, when you teach yoga, this was years before I ever went to yoga teacher training. He said, when you teach yoga, you should lean into your strengths. He goes, and your strength is actually physical strength. It's never going to be like incredible flexibility. But every person, they have something that they can contribute to. You know, what you're good at, that's what you're going to contribute to. So he said, lean into your strengths. Learn all this really strong yoga. And that was also very, very helpful to me. You know, some people are very bendy and very flexible and they can teach those kind of classes. And then other people are really good at arm balances and they teach that stuff. And so it was helpful for me as a yoga teacher to kind of find my place and find my niche, even though, you know, I wasn't like, I'm never going to be like the most flexible person in the world. So.
And that's like super important to remember. I mean, and that goes for like, I mean, anything body wise, you know, like even some people do better with cooked vegetables versus, you know, raw vegetables. Like everyone's constitution is so drastically different.
Very true.
Yeah. Next question. Number one tip, just whatever the most concise little tip is that you would give a beginner yogi.
I would say try a bunch of different styles of yoga and a bunch of different studios, because, you know, like for some people, like an Iyengar class is going to be really a strong foundation, or some people might do better in a vinyasa class or Ashtanga or Shivananda, but like try a lot of stuff, because especially, I don't want to say the market is sort of saturated with a lot of sort of loose, flowy kind of, not a lot of tradition or a lot of discipline necessarily in all these studios. And I think when you land upon like an authentic, well-versed teacher in a style of yoga that is appropriate for you, you're going to recognize it.
Wow, great answer. I was going to say something else, but I actually like your answer better. Even for me, you know, I went to that really boring, slow yoga class, and I just assumed that's yoga. But there's so many different styles of yoga, and you know, just being the kind of like super hyper hardcore guy who made his career playing as fast as I possibly could on guitar, you know, vinyasa was perfect for me. It was like tailor made for me, because I got to move and, you know, always, you know, constantly being moving. And I find that those more kind of still classes, there's definitely benefit to that, but it's not necessarily for me. And I think if I tried to put that square peg into that round hole, I would have got discouraged very, very fast. So I think it is true. There's a lot of different kinds of yoga out there. You just got to find the one that really resonates with you. So I'm sticking with your answer.
But do you think, like, because I mean, this applies to a lot of things too, like the things that don't really resonate with you or seem just like not the right fit or challenge you? I say, like, are they challenging you? Like, is it something that you should perhaps lean into? You know, if it like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not resonating with you, but it's an area that could be growth, or like.
Well, most definitely. But you know, like we were talking about, like people who can't sit in Shavasana are the ones who like need to lay in Shavasana the most. And for sure there's an element of that. But if you're like really beginning and really getting into this, like you're miles away from like, okay, I sort of have a handle on this. Now I'm ready to be challenged on a deeper level, because already your level is just getting into a yoga practice, right?
Yeah, I think for beginners, it's got to be kind of fun. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The unfun stuff can come later. And that is a really good point. That part of discipline means doing things that you don't want to necessarily do, but that have benefit for you. So I had to learn that too, because I'm super into meditation, and that was something that did not come easy to me whatsoever. Just to sit down and be still and calm your mind and still your mind, and the whole yoga chitta vritti nirodha thing. It was like it was a fight from the beginning. But when I lived in ashrams, I worked myself up to where I could sit cross-legged with my hands stuck in my bead bag, my eyes closed, and just for 2 hours just meditate. And that was all something that I just kind of incrementally developed. First I did it for 10 minutes, and I did it for 20 minutes, and then I kept on going. And it was very balancing for me, because I have like such an active mind. Just to slow it down for just even like a little bit in my life was really, really helpful. I mean, even the Yoga Sutras says that. That's part of yoga. You got to still that mind, or else it's going to be very hard for you to practice any kind of yoga, whether it's physical or spiritual
Or life.
Yeah.
All right. What?
Life is yoga.
Yeah. Weirdest yoga related story.
I don't know if it's the weirdest, but it's kind of a funny one I like to tell sometimes. So I was in India, staying in an ashram in Rishikesh, and we were doing like a lot of like purification practices, like you run a rubber hose up your nose and pull it out your mouth, and that kind of stuff, right, to cleanse. And so one morning,
the thing where you swallow the cloth?
we didn't do that, but we did this one, which is a similar thing. So it was like 4 a.m. or so, January in Rishikesh, northern India. Not super warm, but I guess not as cold as Canada. But anyhow, so me and a group of 6 or 7 other students were there and waiting for our Swami, and what's the practice going to be? And he told us to meet him outside that morning instead of like in the classroom. And so we're all outside, and there's this giant pot of water. And we're like, oh boy, here we go. And so the practice was it was like a salt water, right? And the practice was you just start filling your glass and you just start slamming this water as fast and as hard as you can, because then you're going to throw up, right? And clean your intestines sort of this way. There's other practices where you drink the water and like shoot it out the back end, and you're cleaning like your lower intestine. But today's particular practice was like we're going to be throwing up. And so everybody was freaking out about it, and because I was like the token punk guy in the class or whatever, everyone's kind of like, Miguel will go first, he's fine with this. And there was this sweet lady, her name was Sally. She was of Thai descent, but she'd been living in like Switzerland or something, and had just gotten divorced, and this was her big trip to India. Like, I'm reconnecting to spirituality and starting a new life. And Sally was so freaked out by this. And okay, Miguel, like you got to go first. And so I start slamming the water, and it's going okay. So everyone starts to be like kind of comfortable. They're like, okay. So they start doing it too. And we're all just kind of, and at some point I like hit the point, the limit where it's like, okay, it's coming back up. And I'm like, and what do I do? Where do I go? And Swami's just like pointing like over this balcony, like right by the fucking like Ganga River, like this super holy place, right? And I just started letting go. I just started like throwing up just like the salt water. And Sally, like bless her poor heart, is just so already freaked out and already so grossed out. She's like and starts like spraying vomit like out her fucking nose because she's trying to hold it in, which just sets off like the entire class. Next thing you know, like all 7 or 8 of us are like leaning over the balcony, just like, and goes on for a few minutes. And then like we all come back and we're all just like, and Swami's like, okay, time to go inside for meditation. And like that was just it. There was no like, is everybody okay? Are we like, so we went straight from that inside and sat quietly for an hour, just kind of steeping in this vomit practice.
Oh, that's funny.
I've seen yogis do that. I've seen them swallow the cloth. It's called Dodi Kriya.
Mm-hmm.
This cloth, and then you let it's medicated cloth. It's like medicated ghee infused in this cloth, and you put it in your stomach, and the herbs pull all the mucus and stuff out of your stomach, and then they pull it back up, and the stuff that comes out of your stomach is like gnarly. It's like, wow, this really works.
Oh yeah.
Never did it. I was like, it was too past my comfort zone. I do have some good yoga related stories though. Weird stories. One time, me and Ray Capo, singer for Shelter, we were in India with the whole band. When we lived in ashrams, we're in a band, we're making money, and we would give all the money to the temple. Like we were all brahmacharis, which meant we were monks, so we didn't have money. Like for years, I didn't have a nickel in my pocket. I couldn't buy a drink if I wanted to buy a drink. It's like, it was like monk life. So the whole band was like that. So the only money that we kept from Shelter was we kept a fund that we would go to India once every year. We considered it, playing punk is so heavy that you gotta go to India at least once a year just to kind of like, get your head on straight. So we had this fun and we would go to India. And one time we were in this place called Mayapur, which is sacred city near the Bay of Bengal, right on the Ganges River. And so we're walking with this other Bengali Krishna devotee who knows nothing about Shelter, nothing about punk rock. Like they couldn't even imagine it. You know what I mean? But we're walking across this field and he says, "Oh, see that house over there? That's a famous palm reader. That palm reader lives there." And Ray Capo was like, we gotta go. Let's go to the palm reader. And the guy was like, we want to go? It's a long walk. He's like, no. So we walked all the way to this palm reader's house. And the whole band is there, all 4 of the members of Shelter. And it's this old man, he doesn't speak English. So the other guy has to like translate. And Ray goes first. And he puts out his palm. And the old man starts saying stuff like, "Oh, in the future, this will happen to you." And he only wanted to pay was like the equivalent of it was like 30 cents. It was like so cheap. Like that's how much he wanted for the palm reading. And Ray Capo goes, "No, if you're a real deal palm reader, I want you to look into my palm. I'm not going to pay you anything until you can tell me something substantial about my past that I know that you're the real deal." And so the old man says, okay. He looks at his palm and he says, when you were 18 years old, your father died. And it had such a big effect on you that it sent you on your spiritual journey. And which is 100% true. When he was 18, his father died and it kind of flipped him out and he got into Krishna and stuff. And so once Ray Capo heard that, he goes, "Here's my 30 cents equivalent in rupees. he's telling me about my palm. And so this guy was like this mystical palm reader. And he starts telling him all this. First of all, he looks at his palm. This is the very first thing that he tells Ray Capo. He says, "You're a musician, but you're not a musician." He said, "You're actually a communicator, and you communicate your message through music, although you can't play anything," which is so true. Ray Capo can't play a freaking kazoo. He can't play anything. But, he's got no musical, talent or, inclination whatsoever. But he said, but through music, since you were like a kid, you've been spreading these messages, and now I see you're trying to spread a spiritual message. It's so wonderful. And so he's telling him all this stuff, and it was so amazing that you can look at a person's palm, and some old guy in the middle of a field in Bengal is like telling him all this stuff. And then he says, "Oh boy, I see you're going to be in a terrible car accident. Wow, you're going to be in a really, really bad car accident." And then he goes like, "What? Am I going to live?" He goes, "You're going to live. Oh, you're going to live, but you're going to be in a really bad car accident." And then he goes, "Tell me if this guy's going to be in the accident too." And he points to me, and I put my palm down, and he goes, "Yep. Oh, you're going to be in the same accident. Oh my God, you're going to be in a terrible car accident." And then he says, "Oh my God, check the other two guys from the band." And they put their palms down. He goes, "No, these two guys aren't going to be in the accident." And he was just like, "What the hell? Are we going to be on tour? Like, what's going on with this whole accident thing?" So we kind of forgot all about it. And he said, "When is the accident going to happen?" He says, it's going to be a few years from now." And so sure enough, Shelter goes on. Those two other guys quit the band. We got new guys in the band. We got on Roadrunner Records. The album Mantra came out. We went to South America. Shelter was like outrageously popular in South America. It was like the craziest thing. So we're down there, and we had this really big tour down there, and MTV threw a party for us. And they hired this one lady who's the most famous palm reader in South America. And she's an Indian lady that used to have like a palm reading thing on the Ganges. And somehow or other, she moved to South America, and somehow or other MTV tracked her down. And they hired her at the party, and she was just reading everybody's palms at the party. So, and we knew about her. She's like a famous palm reader in India. And we were like, "Oh my God, this like lady is here. This is so cool." So we walked up to her to get our palms read. And Ray Capo goes first, puts down his palm. She's telling him all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Then she's like, "Oh my God, you're going to be in a horrific car accident." He's like, "Not again. Oh my God." She's like, "Yeah, it says it right here." She goes, "Check everybody else in the band." I put my palm down. "You're going to be in the accident too. Oh my God, it's going to happen within a year." The other guys, "Yes, you're going to be in the accident too." And it was just like, oh my God, we're probably going to be on tour or something. Sure enough, like 9 months later, we're on tour with Earth Crisis, and we played a show in Salt Lake City. And we had this brand new tour manager. It was his first tour. He wasn't really like a professional tour manager. He was just kind of like our friend. And he was driving, and we were driving from Salt Lake City to Denver, and we're driving through the Rocky Mountains. And this new guy was driving, and he fell asleep at the wheel. And our van, and including our trailer, jumped the guardrail off of a cliff, and we flew in the air like a movie down a cliff in the air, 150 feet down this cliff, and the van smashed this like flat part that was down at the bottom of the cliff. It was unbelievable. When the paramedics came, they came and they like saved us. But the next day they came to the hospital to check up on us, and the one paramedic was saying like, "I've been doing this for 20 years." He goes, "Once I get to an accident and I just see the wreckage, I can tell everybody's dead or everybody's alive." He's just like, "I can just tell." And he said, "When I looked over that cliff and I saw your van," he was like, this is it. We're going to be cleaning up a bunch of dead bodies. He's like, I was convinced by it. But somehow or other, like everybody in the band lived. It was almost miraculous. Like they couldn't believe it. But yeah, isn't that crazy that those two palm readers predicted it? It actually happened.
That is
Yes,
bananas. Yeah.
there's something about these ancient sciences, man. Like there's something to it.
There is something to it. It's crazy.
But more importantly, was the musical equipment okay?
No,
No.
everything was broken. Everything was broken.
Were you guys all asleep also when it happened, or were some of you awake when it happened? Do you remember?
Do you want to hear the whole crazy story? We're gonna
Yes.
I'll give you the
Short. Short.
So all of a sudden, I'm sleeping in the back. We had this loft in the back, and we had a big kind of plastic cap on it. We customized it so there was all these different places to sleep. There was like a bed that was like above the driver's seat, and so we were just stuffed with the band and all of our roadies and everything. And all of a sudden, I was woken up by the driver screaming, and the whole van was like weightless, and it was going like this. And I was thinking, oh my God, we're getting in an accident. And as soon as that thought hit my mind, all of a sudden it was just like we hit the ground and like the plastic cracked. And I just remember dirt just coming into my face, and the dirt is in my mouth and like up my nose and everything. It was so crazy, this crash. It was nuts. It was like out of a movie. And Ray Capo was right next to me, and I was sleeping with my head towards the back of the van. He was sleeping with his head towards the front of the van, so his feet were by me. And when everything happened, like, nobody said anything for like a minute. Like everybody was just freaked out, like in shock. And I looked up at Ray, who's like my oldest friend in the world. I met him when I was like 15 years old. We had one of those harmoniums on tour with us, those little pump pianos Bajan's with. And it had hit him in the face. It slid from the back of the loft where my head was, and it flew up and it hit him in the face. But the way that it hit him was it hit one side of his face. So he looked like that dude from Batman. Like one side was perfectly okay, and the other side was just black and blue and like mangled. So that was like the first thing I noticed was about his face. Like one side of his face just like mangled. And then I said, Ray, wake up. We were in an accident. And he wasn't responding. And I was like, wake up. I was like, wake up. And I was grabbing his leg. And then I was like, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I was like, oh my God, he's dead. I thought he was dead. And then our roadie was in the loft that was on top of where the drivers were. And he comes to, he was knocked unconscious. He comes to consciousness. He was like, Parmananda, help me. I can't feel my legs. Oh my God, the bone is sticking out of my leg. He's telling me, he's like feeling down to like feel his legs, and like his femur bone had detached from his hip, and that big ball was sticking out of his leg. And he was like, I'm bleeding. Oh my God, I can't. And he had broken one of his vertebrae in his neck. He had the same break that Christopher Reeve from Superman had. He just like demolished one of the vertebrae in his neck. And so he's screaming, I'm going to die. And for some reason he's saying, Parmananda, please help me. He's calling out to me specifically for help. And I'm like, oh my God, the singer for Shelter's dead. Our roadie's going to die any minute. I got to get help. So the van, the big plastic, we were on our side, the big plastic top of the van was cracked. So I somehow managed to just kind of like pull myself out of the van. And I realized we were at the bottom of a mountain, and I looked up in the mountain. I was like, oh my God, I got to climb up to the road. And so I got to my feet, and I took like 2 or 3 steps, and I realized, oh my God, I am really hurt. Like, there's no way I'm going to make it to the top of the mountain. I took like 3 steps, and I just fell to the ground, and I turned really quick. So I landed on my back. And what had happened was I had broken like 6 ribs, like really close to my spine.
Oh,
I was in such pain. Oh my God. And I didn't know it at the time, but my hand was cut. I dislocated my shoulder and I dislocated my thumb, and my hand was cut really bad. And so all I was wearing was a white shirt and underwear. And I looked down at my white shirt and it was just covered with blood, but it was from my hand. But I was on the ground. I was on the ground and my head was cut a little bit and I could feel the blood kind of dripping off my ear. And so I'm thinking, but I couldn't check my head because I had dislocated my shoulder and my back was so screwed up. So I couldn't get my hands to my head to check if my head was in one piece. So I was on my back and I was just thinking, my head is broken open right now. Nobody's going to find us. I'm going to bleed out here at the bottom of this freaking ravine. And the singer for the band is already dead. None of the other guys in the band said anything. Like, I guess they were just in shock. Like, I didn't hear them. The only other guy, I was like, the rest of the band is dead. The only other guy besides me that's alive is the roadie, and he's going to die any minute. And even I'm laying on my back, he's like, help me. Oh my God, I'm going to die. Help me. Oh my God. It was gnarly. It was super, super gnarly. And I had no other recourse but to chant. I just started chanting. It was like my only shelter. Like, there was nothing else to take shelter of but Krishna and Krishna's holy name. And it was so weird because I was in so much pain that I was on the verge of passing out. You know, your body just like, it can't take the pain and you just pass out. And I was in so much pain and I would almost pass out and I'd be like, no, because I thought if I passed out, I wouldn't wake up. I would just die. So just out of the sheer will to live, even though I was in so much pain, when I was passing out, I'd just be like, no, stay awake, stay conscious. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And I was just like chanting in like the most pain ever. And like, we ended up getting rescued, but probably for like an hour, I was just down at the bottom of that pit, just chanting.
That is a long fucking time.
You telling me? Let me tell you. And it's like desert climate. So it's hot during the day and it's freezing at night. It's probably in the 30s or maybe like the, 40s or something. And all I have is a t-shirt and shorts on. And the ground underneath me is so cold. Like, my whole body is just like shivering, convulsing the whole time because I'm so cold. And it was wild. Like, I was basically just praying the whole time. And I was saying, like, Krishna, I am not ready to die. Like, even with all the spiritual stuff that I was doing, living in ashrams, chanting, doing this, meditating, I was like, I came to the sad conclusion that I was not even nearly ready to like die and have any sort of spiritual liberation, like, whatsoever. So I was just like calling out. I was just like, Krishna, just help me. Like, please, I don't know what to do. I'm not ready to die. I'm going to die. Help me. Help the poor roadie. And it was just kind of like in super deep prayer. And I got this magical realization that to this day, I think it was just somehow that I was in such deep, sincere prayer that Krishna was just like, here, I'm going to give you a little glimpse of enlightenment. And I was sitting in the dirt, bloody, chanting. And this realization came to me that I am perfectly fine. Because it says in the Bhagavad Gita that you're completely separate from your body. Like, the body's just a covering for the soul. You're some sort of spiritual energy that's inside of the body. You're not even your mind. Your mind is like the software of the computer. Your body's like the hardware of the computer. Like, you're something that's completely separate from even your body and even your mind. And so I had this realization that people only suffer because they identify so closely with the body. It's the body that suffers. You don't suffer. The Bhagavad Gita says the body can't be, you know, there's that famous verse, the soul can't be withered by the wind or cut by any weapon or burned by fire. You know, you're eternal. You're okay. It's just your body gets messed up. And so I was thinking, like, even when like you go to a movie, like what's the magic of going to a movie? They turn out all the lights so you can kind of get into the movie. And what you do is you identify with the hero of the movie. And you identify so closely with the hero of the movie. When that hero wins a battle, you feel courageous. Or when that hero has a love interest, you feel romantic. You know, you're feeling it through. It's not happening to you. You're sitting in your seat eating popcorn, but because you're identifying with that hero, you're having this whole experience. So our physical experience in this world is the exact same thing. We're just identifying with our body, and we're thinking that all this stuff is happening to us, but it's actually not. It's almost just like a video game that we're playing. And so I just had this idea that somehow, some way, even though I'm racked with pain right now, somehow or other, on a deeper level, I am perfectly okay. I am spirit, aham brahmasmi. I am okay. And this wave of comfort just kind of came over me. And I was actually good. Like I was just chanting in a different, not out of desperation, but I was almost chanting in like gratitude. And then probably 5 minutes later, a huge thick blanket just descends over me. And this paramedic sticks his face in my face. He goes, "You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay." And then these paramedics came and they saved us. It was wild. And everybody lived. Even the guy that broke his neck lived.
But you know what, though? The both fortune or palm readers, I was going to say fortune tellers, the palm readers, they just said you'd be in an accident. They didn't, at least in this, you were laying it here, they didn't say that you would die.
No, they said
So,
they said
just said,
they said that we wouldn't die.
yeah.
But at the time, I wasn't even remembering the palm readers. It was just too gnarly to even think about that. I really thought I was going to die. Like I was convinced that I was not going to wake up and see the sunrise. It was great. Punk rock, man. It's a trip.
Yeah. That's brutal and gnarly. And if we were like not recording a podcast right now, I would sit here for like 5 minutes and process that. But next question. If you could do yoga with one person, who would it be?
Alive or dead?
Yeah.
I mean, it'd have to be some teacher that I felt I could gain a lot in a short amount of time from practicing with them and learning from them. But then there's also, I guess, the temptation of like, oh yeah, I would do yoga, you know, with Joey Ramone or something, just to hang out with them. But like Shivananda or BKS Iyengar or something there. Some teacher I really feel could like advance me in my own practice in a short amount of time.
Yeah, why did Sid Vicious immediately jump into my mind?
Right.
Is that your final answer?
If I had to actually choose somebody like that was actually a yogi to practice, like, was that what you meant by the question?
No, all my questions for anything with this podcast, I just leave them very vague and leave it up to the person to answer it how they want. So could be a writer, could be a friend, it could be, teacher, anybody. Sid Vicious.
Honestly, the first two people that came into my mind was Sid Vicious and Yoda. I don't know why I thought of Yoda. But I would love to practice yoga with Krishnamacharya. You know who Krishnamacharya is?
Mm-hmm.
He's BKS Iyengar's teacher.
Yeah.
It's really cool because, you know, he's acknowledged as, you know, the one empowered teacher. Like he was an acharya, means an especially empowered teacher. So he's considered like an acharya because he had this thing that he was probably the first person that thought yoga's for all people. Like, why is it just in India? Like, yoga could transform the lives of everybody in the whole world. So he was the first person that had the idea that we need to take yoga everywhere. So when he had his students like Patabi Joyce and BKS and Yengar and his son, Jessica Char, and other people, he sent them out. Go to the West, go to America, go to Europe, spread this teachings of yoga. And what's really cool, I have a fondness for Krishnamacharya because he's a Vaishnav like me. Like, he's a Krishna devotee. Like, Krishnamacharya means the teacher of chanting the holy name of Krishna. Like, he's in the exact lineage like that I'm from. And I used to hear that, he would teach these like real super gnarly, 8-hour classes, like physical classes. And then afterwards, like when it was nighttime, he'd call everybody in and he would tell people Mahabharata stories and Ramayan stories and, all these stories from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I always just think that it must have just been so wonderful to be his student, and having that mission, let's spread yoga around the world. And it's just so true. Like, anybody that practices yoga nowadays, they owe an incredible debt to this one teacher, Krishnamacharya, that had this vision that yoga was for everybody. So I'd love to practice with him. He was probably awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. What is the worst place that you've crammed a yoga session in, and then also the best place that you've done yoga?
I mean, I can easily name hundreds of the grossest, most dirty backstages that I've done, like up dog and down dog. And then you look at your hand and it's got like 8 years of like, beer spillage that they never cleaned, like on your hands and your feet, but you got to do it, to get ready for the show. You got to do some yoga. I can't even think of one, but just pick any gross, any little punk club, and there you go for the worst place, at least. What about you, Miguel?
My brain kind of goes that same direction. It's definitely backstage somewhere, but like for sure punk club backstages are gross, and also like music festivals. Like, sometimes you're like, cool, there's like a field and some grass, but like the only quiet spot is like next to a bunch of fucking porta potties or something, and it's like, this is home for now.
Probably some of the best places was in India. I remember doing yoga in Badrinath, which is the topmost village in the Himalayas that's inhabited. Like, it's so way, you're up so high, you're in like the clouds, and you look at the mountains and you're like on par with the glaciers. Like, you just see glaciers. Like, that's how high up in the Himalayas you are. And it's so beautiful. Like, you just look down and you could see like the origins of the Ganges, coming down from the glaciers. And it's just so breathtakingly beautiful just to do yoga there, high up in the Himalayas. And there's just something, they say that's where Vyasadeva did yoga, and that's where all these great yogis from thousands of years ago, they had ashrams up there. There's some kind of energy there, that yoga's been done there for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years by all these famous yogis from time immemorial. And you can just feel it, when you're up there doing yoga. So that's probably my number one most beautiful place.
That sounds awesome.
I'm gonna a sort of different direction, but I have like a memory of me and my wife and the first studio we ever owned, and it was in Laramie, Wyoming, in like this historic building that had previously been a church and converted to a yoga studio. And when we got engaged, I had like asked her to marry me there, and we had to get married kind of quick when we did to get her US citizenship rolling. And so it was like a really special place for us. And I remember when our daughter Olivia was born, we used to bring her to the studio with us quite often. She would just nap in her little car seat while me and Emily would sit and do our practice. And that's it's a beautiful place in my mind to kind of retreat to. So.
That's sweet. I like that.
You asked your wife to marry you inside a yoga studio?
Mhm.
You're a real yogi, dude.
Get this though, we're also real punks, because the night before that we had been up in Denver for some show. Maybe like Peg Boy or something. Someone was playing, but we partied pretty hard, because that was back in, still we were partying pretty hard back then, to the point of getting a little sick. And we had some friends driving us back to Wyoming, and Emily threw up on me in our friend's car. I'm sure she's gonna love me telling this story on the podcast, but and the next day, like I had to be at the studio for something, and I cleaned up pretty well, and I was there, I was doing it right, and she was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna sit home. I can't make it." And I had a friend go to the studio and lay out our mats, lay out all these flowers and all these candles and this big romantic thing. So I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, you have to go to the studio. And I made up some fucking bullshit about like I needed her help with something or other, but like she walked in and saw the whole thing. And yeah, but at that point in our lives, it was this real sort of like, here's our punk life and here's our yoga life, and like how are they at odds with each other? And we're in a better balance these days, but yeah, good memories nonetheless, I guess.
Somehow a beautiful throw up story.
Yeah, I've got plenty of throw up stories, and only more since I got 3 kids now, so it just never stops. It's just
Who would ever guess that the dude that plays Skate or Die is such a sincere yogi?
Like we said, man, life is weird. Yoga's weird. It's a weird thing having this body and this mind for however long we have it. So enjoying it though.
There is something super counterculture about both yoga and punk rock. There is some similarities there, because the world is so materialistic that to be a yogi, you got to be a little bit of a rebel too,
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Favorite style of yoga, if you could only pick one.
Favorite style? For me, it's vinyasa.
I'll go Shivananda yoga. It's kind of like a set sequence, but not as physically intense as like Ashtanga, but really like a well-balanced practice. I think it's like a 90-minute daily practice with breathing exercises and relaxation, but also like a good sort of disciplined asana.
Cool. Okay. Now I have a few this or that questions. So just like answer like that, okay? So inside or outside yoga?
Inside.
Like,
just because I live in Canada and it's cold.
I would prefer outside. I'll go with outside.
okay. Hot yoga or room temperature yoga?
I a little bit think hot yoga is kind of a scam in a way, and we could dig pretty far into it, but this heat should be coming from tapas and from the work that you're doing, not from turning up the thermostat necessarily. And also, like in India, a lot of yoga is hot yoga just because the temperature itself is hot, right? Not because we're
creating that environment.
Yeah.
I taught at a hot yoga studio for years, and at first I didn't like it. Then you just kind of learn to like it. Like there's something like just all that sweating. It's and like I said, like it reminded me actually of when I used to practice in the old days in India. Because we would practice outside and it would be super hot, and you'd just be covered in sweat. There's something very like detoxing about that. So I'm actually a fan of hot yoga.
Opposite sides of the aisle on that one, I think, but I still like you.
Okay. Yoga with goats or yoga with cats?
I guess goats because I'm allergic to cats, but I'm also the whole like yoga with animals thing also for me is a little like
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not such a yoga with goats type guy either, or yoga with cats, but I'll go with cats.
Okay.
Goats, I don't know, they seem like they would be more in the way than a cat. I don't know.
probably rowdier
Yeah.
with goats than with cats.
Yeah, I wouldn't want any animals, but that's why I picked the question because like I forced you to pick one, even though they're both bad. Aerial yoga or stand-up paddleboard yoga?
I think aerial yoga actually, just because like I practiced aerial yoga for a little bit. There was a small studio in Laramie, Wyoming, and just first kind of out of curiosity, but I ended up finding a lot of because I studied Iyengar yoga a lot too, and like the use of props or whatever to kind of help align your body or move in ways you might not be able to otherwise. I find that the drapes or whatever they call it that you use in aerial yoga offers a bit of that, and especially with like inversions, there's this nice back bends or whatever. If you're hanging down, it's there's a way of like taking the gravity off your spine and letting you open up a little more.
I've never done aerial yoga, so I'm going to go with the stand-up paddleboard yoga, which I've done before and I enjoyed. I'll have to go with that one.
It's probably pretty fun. I've never done that.
Porcell, would you do aerial yoga? Would you try it?
I would try any kind of yoga. Sure, I would try it.
Cool. That concludes my questions for this episode. So, do you guys have anything else you want to share? Or this is airing December 6th. If you have anything coming up post December 6th that you want to share about, or final thoughts? Oh, Miguel, while we're here, it was actually our interview where I was talking with you and I was asking people like to kind of summarize like any final tips or thoughts. And then somehow you helped me come up, or whatever, we came up with the idea of delay dying. So if you had to give someone tips on how to delay dying, since that's the tagline for my business.
Yeah.
Yes. So from that conversation on, like I've always asked people exactly like, so I say, if you have any final thoughts or tips, or if you had to give someone advice on how to delay dying, or in other words, live happier and healthier, what would you say? So I ask people that. If you want to answer that right now, you're welcome to.
I first and foremost would say to that stress is probably gonna kill you faster than anything. And so little twofold approach to stress. See the ways in life where you can reduce some stress, but also see the ways in life where you can increase your ability to tolerate and handle stress, and realize that like oftentimes things aren't as serious or as heavy as you think they might be. Like a lot of the dramas of life are just kind of meaningless or stupid at best. But even the things that are heavy and that do carry a lot of weight, like there's good healthy ways to like go through it rather than just like self-destruction and increasing your stress. So keep an eye on stress.
I dig it. Porcell, you got anything?
I would say, what worked for me is when I turned 50, I went to the doctor. When you turn 50 and you go to the doctor for the checkup, it's like 6 hours. Like they're checking everything. Like they took so much blood out of me. It was ridiculous. And so I went back like a week later, and the doctor came out and he said, I just wanted to kind of see you and meet you because your blood work is like the blood work of like a 20-year-old. Like they kept on saying that this guy's 50, and I can't even believe that you're 50. Like I had to come out and like see for myself. And he was like, this is the doctor asking me. He's like, what is your secret? Like your liver function is like the liver function of like a 20-year-old. I can't figure it out. And I said, well, when I was 15, I went straight edge. I stopped doing all drugs. I haven't drank a beer or any alcohol since I was like a tiny kid. So that's probably why my liver function is so good. And then I was like, when I was 19, I became vegetarian and I just started eating a healthy diet. And just doing those two things is going to save you so much. First of all, just giving up the alcohol and drugs is going to save you so much trouble in your life. But I think it really just doing those two things, and just probably you can add a third thing of just staying active and moving your body every day, doing some sort of exercise. You can keep yourself healthy for a really long time. You know, people are looking for some kind of magic bullet and some kind of thing that they can take and some kind of easy way out. But really, there is no easy way out. You just create some healthy habits and they pay dividends, especially like when you start to, 30, 40, 50, when you start getting up there. And there is no reason why their bodies have to fall apart when they're 30, 35. It's just due to people's self-destructive habits. And it's kind of sad to see. Like, if you weed those out of your life, you're going to be so much more healthy and happy. So I would say those three things. And then if I was going to put a fourth thing on top of it, I would say find your contribution. Because I think like being healthy is more than just being physically healthy. Like if you really feel like your life has purpose and meaning, and you're making a meaningful contribution to the lives of other people in this world, that also keeps you healthy, and that will also manifest in your body too. So super easy. Be straight edge, be vegetarian, body every day, and find your contribution. You do those four things, you're gonna be healthy for a long time.
I love that.
It's true though. It's all the basic foundational, lifestyle choices is what adds up.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
It is. Yeah. Awesome. This was a lot of fun. I love your stories and the thought you put into your answers, and I love it. So thank you for making time and for doing this final episode with me.
Can I pitch my new band?
Go for it.
All right, I'm in a new band that I'm super excited about. It's a band called Values Here. It's melodic hardcore and it's got a girl singer, which is so cool because I've never been in a band with a girl before, what to speak of a girl singer. So it's very kind of like new and refreshing for me. And the girl is like a really incredible singer. And I just think the band is super good. And our record just came out. It's called Take Your Time, I'll Be Waiting. And so please check that out. Check it out on Spotify. Our Instagram is @ValuesHere. And as a matter of fact, we want to go on tour with Teenage Bottlerocket. What do you say, bro?
There we go. It'll be the most yoga-filled tour.
Oh my God, that would be so fun. We'll have everybody doing yoga. We should go on one tour bus. We'll call it the yoga bus. It would be awesome.
That'd be nice. Hey, Amy, I just want to say, I'll give the quick plug too. Bottlerocket is putting together like 1 million tour dates for next year, just like pretty much every year. So we'll be, if you live somewhere, we'll be there. Come hang out. And
are you playing New York? You have any New York shows set up?
We were just in New York like 2 months ago. Nothing yet, but something will come up for sure. And
hey, follow me on Instagram, the Hardcore Yogi. I want to keep in touch with you.
Absolutely, man. If you do a book and you need any blurbs or any kind of shit like that, like please think of me. I'm all about it,
dude. I need more than a blurb. I need all of your advice.
Yes,
2 books.
Happy to throw it all your way. But yeah, I just want to say really thanks to both of you for having me, and Amy, thanks for all your support over the years, and I really have appreciated getting to be a part of it, and really loved what you've done here and look forward to seeing what you continue to do and what you do next. So.
Thank you.
On that same note, I would like to say something to you, Amy. I'm kind of sad to hear that you're not going to be doing this anymore. And I really think that you're good at it. Like, I think part of your contribution in this lifetime is going to be talking with people and, talking to them about health and higher topics and, how we can uplift each other. Like, you have a real knack for bringing that out in people. So even if you don't do the specific podcast, I encourage you to kind of somehow keep doing that.
I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm getting rid of the newsletter. I'm getting rid of Instagram. The podcast, at least for next year, won't be doing anything, but I'm starting a Patreon. So it'll be a combination of the content in the newsletter and the Instagram with the little inspiration videos and record dig, posts and that sort of stuff. So it'll be a blend of that motherfucker can pay for. So that's what I'll be doing for the next bit. It's been 4 years of this business and 3 of the podcast, and I've just sort of run out of steam. It is a business. What I've been trying to do is a business, and there hasn't been a lot of return. So it's I need to shift my energy. And I don't know. I'm just open to the path unfolding as it will. And so, we'll see what the future holds.
I'm sure it'll be good.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you guys.
You need your own big TV show.
Let's get Amy on TV.
Someone make it happen, please. I'll do it. But that's the other thing that's interesting too. A couple close friends have noticed this, that just the videos that I used to put out 3-4 years ago versus now, I've just really evolved and grown more in general, but also on camera. I love just being stupid and silly and just upbeat and stuff. And when I first started, the videos were horrible, so bad I was petrified on camera. And so I've leaned into just, being engaging and talking and sharing and stuff. And I love it. So it's bittersweet what I'm doing, stopping and shifting, but get me on a TV show and I'll do it.
I think bigger and better things are in your future.
Hopefully. Thank you.
Once again, all beat out. The time's been through, I'm not far. But leaving, it was my luck. It's leaving, why take touch? Look for the NCC, I'm true. I'm trying to wild slow. Look for the NCC, I'm true. I'm trying to get wild slow. I'm full. Take me away. I've been around, I've seen enough. Working for the weekend, not job. See, that's the question I gotta ask why. I'm sure that's I tried. Wasn't the funny as you can see,